Imagine spending your hard-earned money on a chainsaw, pulling that starter cord 50 times, and the thing just laughs at you. Now imagine that happening every single time you try to use it. Thousands of loggers, arborists, and homeowners around the world have bought chainsaws so terrible that they literally threw them in the trash, ran them over with trucks, or used them as doorstops. Today we're counting down the 10 most hated chainsaws ever manufactured, and number 1 might genuinely shock you. Number 10. Troy-Bilt TB216. Let's kick this list off with the Troy-Bilt TB216, a 16-inch gas chainsaw that promised homeowners a reliable cutting experience at a budget-friendly price point. What they actually got was a masterclass in frustration. Troy-Bilt, a brand historically associated with tillers and lawn equipment, was acquired by MTD Products back in 2001. MTD is a massive outdoor power equipment manufacturer based in Valley City, Ohio, and they produce equipment under several brand names. When they got hold of Troy-Bilt, the focus shifted hard toward cost-cutting, and nowhere was that more obvious than in their chainsaw lineup. The TB216 quickly earned a reputation for parts that fail far too soon. Users across major retail platforms consistently reported the pull chain pulley breaking, the chain cover melting from heat during normal use, and general reliability problems that made the saw more of a project than a tool. One reviewer summed it up perfectly when they said that for every 20 minutes of cutting, they had 1 hour of taking the saw apart for one reason or another. At retailers like Ace Hardware, the TB216 averaged around 3.4 stars. At Home Depot, only about half of buyers said they would recommend it to someone else. For a chainsaw in the $200 range, those are damning numbers. You could find far more capable saws from Echo or Husqvarna at a similar price point that would actually survive a full day of yard work. The TB216 is the kind of chainsaw that gives budget saws a bad name. Not every affordable chainsaw is terrible, but this one certainly helped build that stereotype. Number 9. Remington RM4620 Outlaw. Remington is a name that carries weight in the firearms world, but their chainsaw division tells a very different story. The Remington RM4620 Outlaw is a 46cc gas chainsaw with a 20-inch bar, and on paper it looks like a capable machine for the price. In practice, it has left a trail of frustrated customers behind it. Remington Power Tools has been around since the 1930s, but their modern chainsaw lineup is manufactured overseas with a strong emphasis on keeping costs low. The Outlaw was marketed as a powerful homeowner saw, but multiple users reported seized engines after minimal use, chronic oil leaks from the bottom of the housing, and carburetors so sensitive to adjustment that even experienced small engine mechanics described them as nearly impossible to tune properly. One particularly memorable complaint came from a buyer who mixed his fuel exactly to the manufacturer's specifications using the oil that came with the saw. After a short period of use, the engine seized. When he contacted Remington, they blamed improper fuel mix, a diagnosis the owner rejected since he had followed the instructions to the letter. The pattern of complaints pointed to deeper quality control issues. Chain oil systems that leaked when the saw was stored, plastic components that couldn't handle the heat generated during normal cutting, and starting systems that worked one day and refused to cooperate the next. When service centers told customers they had never even heard of Remington Power Tools, that told you everything you needed to know about the brand standing in the professional world. Number 8. Stihl MS 170. Now, before the Stihl loyalists come for me in the comments, hear me out. The Stihl MS 170 is not a terrible chainsaw in an absolute sense. It is, however, the most disappointing Stihl ever made, and it earned a spot near the top of multiple community polls as the worst chainsaw to carry the Stihl name. The MS 170 is Stihl's cheapest and least powerful chainsaw. It has a 30.1cc engine producing 1.3 brake horsepower, and it comes with a 16-inch bar. Stihl designed it as an entry-level homeowner saw for light pruning and cutting small branches. The problem is that people see the Stihl name, expect Stihl performance, and end up deeply disappointed. When the website Fire and Saw ran a poll of over 300 Stihl users asking which model was the worst, the MS 170 was right there in the top picks. Users described it as underpowered, frustrating to work with on anything larger than small limbs, and generally unworthy of the Stihl badge. The fixed-jet carburetor is prone to clogging and corroding more quickly than adjustable carburetors found on higher-end models. Starting problems, stalling issues, and fuel delivery failures are among the most commonly reported complaints. Many experienced saw users pointed out that the real issue is expectations. People who are used to running a Stihl MS 261 or MS 362 pick up a 170 and feel like they've been handed a toy. It struggles with hardwood, it bogs down in thicker logs, and it simply does not have the grunt to handle anything beyond the lightest yard maintenance. For professionals, it is essentially useless. The MS 170 exists to get people into the Stihl ecosystem at the lowest possible price. And while that is a valid business strategy, the result is a saw that has probably turned more people away from the brand than it has brought in. Number 7. Husqvarna 435. Husqvarna is one of the most respected names in the chainsaw world. The Swedish company has been manufacturing chainsaws since 1959, and models like the 372 XP and the 562 XP are legendary among professional loggers and arborists. The Husqvarna 435, however, is not one of those legendary models. The 435 is a 40.9 cc gas chainsaw aimed at homeowners. It was equipped with Husqvarna's Smart Start feature, which was supposed to reduce the effort needed to pull start the engine. In reality, the 435 earned a brutal reputation for being almost impossible to start. Users reported pulling the cord dozens of times with nothing but sputters and coughs from the engine. One buyer described the experience by saying the closest they ever got to an actual start were a couple of coughs and sputters that gave them only faint hope of further functionality. That is not a review. That is a cry for help. Beyond the starting issues, the 435 suffered from inconsistent idle behavior, stalling during cuts, and generally unreliable performance that made it a chore to use rather than a help around the property. When a chainsaw's primary feature, its Smart Start system, becomes the main source of user complaints, something has gone fundamentally wrong in the design process. On major retail platforms, the 435 consistently received lower ratings than its stablemates, and less than 77% of buyers said they would recommend it. For a brand like Husqvarna, which prides itself on professional-grade reliability, the 435 was an embarrassment. Number 6. Poulan 3314. Strato engine. Poulan has a complicated history. The company was founded by Claude Poulan in Shreveport, Louisiana, in 1946. Over the decades, ownership changed hands multiple times, passing through Emerson Electric, Electrolux, and eventually landing under the Husqvarna Group umbrella. Through all those ownership changes, the quality of Poulan's consumer-grade saws took hit after hit. The Poulan 3314, equipped with a stratified charge engine, is one of the most universally despised saws in collector and user communities. The Strato engine design was adopted to meet EPA emissions regulations, but the implementation in the 3314 was deeply flawed. Experienced small engine mechanics who have worked on these saws describe them as running terribly straight out of the box. Even with carburetor adjustment, the 3314 was a boggy, stalling mess. Every single unit that mechanics examined reportedly had the metering lever adjustment way out of specification from the factory. Fixing that issue would at least make the saw start and run reliably, but even then, it packed very little power. Fitted with a 14-inch bar and a full skip 3/8 low-profile chain, the 3314 struggled to cut through anything with any urgency. The saving grace, if you could call it one, was that the saw used decent ABS plastic housings and was relatively straightforward to disassemble and work on. But when a chainsaw's best quality is that it is easy to take apart, that tells you everything about how often you will need to do exactly that. For the same price as a 3314, you could find non-clamshell Craftsman or Champion saws with adjustable carburetors and much more capable engines. The Poulan 3314 was a saw that existed to meet a price point, and the corners they cut to get there were painfully obvious. Number 5. Husqvarna 235 and 236. We are putting these two together because they share the same fundamental problems, and the chainsaw community hates them in equal measure. The Husqvarna 235 and 236 are small homeowner saws that were sold worldwide in enormous numbers. They are also among the most complained about chainsaws in the history of the brand. In the Fire and Saw community poll on the worst Husqvarna chainsaws, the 235 and 236 scooped up a combined 14% of the vote. Users described them as underpowered, sluggish, and not fit for purpose. One owner claimed to have gone through 3 Husqvarna 235 saws, and none of them lasted more than 8 months. The problems with these saws are systemic. Air leaks around the carburetor and intake are extremely common. The accelerator pump diaphragms develop leaks. The tank vents fail, causing vapor lock. The chain tensioning system is poorly designed. The carburetors are hypersensitive and nearly impossible to keep in tune. When the engines get hot, mysterious air leaks develop in places that are almost impossible to diagnose, and the plastic transfer port inserts have been known to work loose. Professional saw repair technicians have publicly stated that they refuse to work on the 235 and 236 series, calling them unfixable. One mechanic wrote that they were one series of saws he did not touch anymore because he had better things to do than trying to fix unfixable stuff. When compared to the Husqvarna 350, 357, or even the budget-friendlier 435, the 235 and 236 are in a different universe of unreliability. If someone gave one community member a brand new 240, the slightly larger sibling, they said they would throw it straight in the trash. That level of animosity toward a product from one of the world's most respected chainsaw brands is remarkable. Number 4. Stihl MS 362 CM Early M-tronic version. This one is going to be controversial because the Stihl MS 362 is generally considered a solid 60cc class chainsaw. The non-M-tronic version has been praised by users and professionals alike. But the early M-tronic version, the MS362CM, developed a notorious reputation for electronic carburetor problems that drove owners absolutely crazy. M-tronic is Stihl's electronic fuel management system. It uses a solenoid-controlled carburetor that automatically adjusts fuel and air mixture based on operating conditions, temperature, fuel quality, and altitude. The idea is brilliant. The execution, at least in the early 362cm models, was not. The core issue was the M-tronic solenoid valve. The early black solenoid used a metal-on-plastic sealing surface. Over time, abrasive wear would cause the seal to fail, leading to the saw loading up at idle, dying unexpectedly, and becoming extremely difficult to restart. Multiple owners reported that the saw would start and idle fine, but at wide-open throttle, it would stall and die instantly. Others experienced a gradual loss of power during cutting, forcing them to constantly pull out and re-rev the engine. Stihl eventually acknowledged the problem and released an upgraded solenoid kit with a white solenoid that featured a metal-to-metal sealing surface. This redesigned component solved the issue, but by that point, many early adopters had already spent hundreds of dollars on repeated carburetor replacements and dealer visits. One frustrated owner reported being on their 3rd carburetor for the same saw, with Stihl refusing to cover the replacement under warranty. The non-M-tronic MS362 remains a well-regarded saw, but the early electronic models became a cautionary tale about rushing new technology to market before it is fully proven. In community polls, the 362cm earned enough votes to land in the top 10 worst Stihl chainsaws, and that distinction is almost entirely due to the M-tronic solenoid issue. Number 3. Husqvarna 240. If the 235 and 236 are hated, then the Husqvarna 240 is absolutely despised. In the same community poll that flagged the 235 and 236, the Husqvarna 240 took first place as the worst Husqvarna chainsaw ever made, capturing a staggering 30% of all votes. The 240 is a 40cc homeowner chainsaw with a 16-inch bar. Like its smaller siblings, it suffers from air leaks, carburetor problems, vapor lock, and poor build quality. But the 240 adds insult to injury because it was positioned as a step up from the 235 and 236. Buyers expected better performance and got the same problems with a slightly larger engine. User comments about the 240 read like a support group confession. People describe it as the most erratic piece of equipment they have ever used. It does not run properly, it does not tune properly, and it does not hold resale value. Community members say things like the 240 was the worst saw they ever had the displeasure of owning, and that it should never have left the factory. The 240 had poor performance across the board. Its power-to-weight ratio was terrible for its class. Its engine seals were prone to damage. Its components felt cheap compared to other Husqvarna models in a similar price range. Mechanics reported that the 240 was the single most troublesome Husqvarna model they encountered, and many simply refused to repair them because the effort was not worth the outcome. The Husqvarna 240 is the kind of product that damages a brand's reputation. For a company that produces world-class professional saws like the 572 XP and the 390 XP, having the 240 in their catalog was a blemish they eventually addressed by discontinuing the model. Good riddance, said virtually everyone in the chainsaw community. Number 2. Poulan Wild Thing. FIA 4080 WT. The Poulan Wild Thing might have the most ironic name in chainsaw history. There is absolutely nothing wild about this saw unless you count the wild frustration it causes its owners. The Wild Thing is a 40cc chainsaw with an 18-inch bar that was sold at big box retailers for well under $200. It was one of the best-selling budget chainsaws in North America for years, and it is also one of the most universally loathed. The problems start with the pull cord. The Wild Thing is infamous for being extraordinarily difficult to start. Users describe having to pull the starter cord with extreme force, to the point where only a very strong person can get the engine to turn over. This issue is often related to the flywheel, excess fuel flooding the crankcase, misadjusted clutch brakes, or clogged exhaust ports. But the starting issue is just the beginning. The Wild Thing's fuel lines are made of materials that deteriorate rapidly, especially with ethanol-blended gasoline. The carburetor is extremely sensitive and nearly impossible to keep properly tuned. The saw idles erratically, stalls without warning, and frequently refuses to restart once it gets hot. Oil pump failures are common, and the piston and cylinder can score in a shockingly short amount of time due to the engine running lean. One owner on a major tractor forum reported that their Wild Thing cut maybe 10 cords of wood, and that was a generous estimate, before the piston and cylinder gave out. They said that as soon as they could afford a style, the Wild Thing was getting tossed. The Poulan Wild Thing is the ultimate false economy. It costs very little to buy, but between the constant maintenance, the unreliable starting, the poor cutting performance, and the short lifespan, you end up spending more time and money fixing it than you would have spent just buying a proper saw in the first place. Service centers often tell Wild Thing owners that repairs will cost more than the saw is worth. That is the chainsaw equivalent of a death sentence. Number 1. McCulloch Mini Mac 110. And here it is, the number 1 most hated chainsaw ever made. The McCulloch Mini Mac 110. And really, the entire Mini Mac series holds a special place of contempt in the hearts of chainsaw users worldwide. McCulloch was once a giant in the chainsaw industry. Founded by Robert Paxton McCulloch in 1943, the company was originally based in Los Angeles, California, and produced engines for target drones during World War II. After the war, they pivoted to chainsaws and became one of the dominant brands in America. Their professional saws were respected, powerful, and durable. The Mini Mac was supposed to bring chainsaw ownership to the average homeowner. Instead, it brought them misery. The Mini Mac 110 was mass-produced in staggering numbers, starting in the 1970s. McCulloch's strategy with the Mini Mac line was to make the saws as cheaply as possible and sell millions of them. Every design change and every so-called upgrade was made not to improve performance, but to reduce manufacturing costs. The machining quality was atrocious. Pistons were poorly finished, with little to no beveling on the transfer ports, meaning the piston would gouge itself to pieces within a couple of hours of runtime. Air leaks were everywhere because the machining tolerances were so loose. The vibration from a running Mini Mac was described by users as feeling like almost double that of competing saws from the same era. The screws would not stay tight, no matter how clean the threads were, or how much thread-locking compound you applied. The oil pump system was a disaster. Some models used a thumb-operated manual oiler that was barely functional, and the impulse-driven automatic oilers on later models were described by one veteran mechanic as enough to make a preacher cuss and a temperance man take up drinking. Working on a Mini Mac is its own special punishment. The saws are incredibly difficult to disassemble and reassemble. The later models added more plastic components that break easily, and original replacement parts are either impossible to find or absurdly expensive. Professional repair shops refuse to touch them because the labor cost of fixing a Mini Mac exceeds the cost of buying a new budget saw. When McCulloch went through its various ownership changes, passing from the original company to Black & Decker and then to Husqvarna, each successive owner squeezed the brand harder. The quality that once defined McCulloch's professional saws was completely absent from the Mini Mac line. Tree trimmers used to buy Mini Macs in bulk, use them for a season or two, and then throw them away because repairs were more expensive than replacement. That is not a chainsaw. That is a disposable tool masquerading as a real piece of equipment. The McCulloch Mini Mac 110 is the most hated chainsaw ever made because it combined cheap construction, unreliable performance, miserable ergonomics, impossible serviceability, and a name that once meant quality and dragged all of it through the mud. McCulloch is no longer in the chainsaw business in any meaningful way, and the Mini Mac is a big reason why. If you have ever owned one of these chainsaws, drop your horror story in the comments below. And if you are currently using one of them and it somehow works perfectly, well, congratulations, you won the lottery. Hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed this video, smash the like button, and we will see you in the next one.